Morning, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. How's everyone doing? Back for another episode over here. SOC 100. Level Effect crew. SOC 100 crew. How we doing? Good morning. Yeah, doing well. What's going on? We got a pretty good sized crew right off the bat. Nice. 30 right away at like the 3-minute mark. I guess cyber threat intelligence is a bit of a hotter topic. I'm doing well, Tom. Thanks. It's got Wild Piece, Vinny, Tom, Cyber Saiyan, R Double, Patricia, Nubin, Nigel, Muddy, Langron. Lang, haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you back. Kim, Jordan, Demorier, 007, Dezo, maybe. Dezo? Saito, Allen, Yakpo. Good sized crew. Good to have everyone back. Thanks for the follow. Jokes. I'm gonna go with that. Karina, excited about CTI? Yeah. CTI is big. Big topic. Everyone have a good week? This week flew by. I don't even know like how it's already Saturday. Easy, so self-complete the labs and challenges from last week. Yeah. Lot going on. First week on the job. How was it? Nigel, what's up? You're in CTI? Cool. Well, you should enjoy this. This is a bit of an intro. This is sort of the first introduction to cyber threat intelligence that a lot of students have even seen or heard of. So we're going to take it a little bit easy and cover as much as we can. So it might be a little bit of a review for you, but I think you'll enjoy it nevertheless. Good to have you with us. Yeah, easy does it. I'd love to hear first week on the job. What is it like? What is it actually like? I think some people would appreciate that. Jordan, morning, that time of the week already, yeah. DT, Doug, good to have you back. Cyber threat intelligence. Not sure if you're typing over there easy, but yeah, okay, cool. Oh, you were. So it was training. All right, lol. It's got a bit boring, yeah. But once I started shadowing, I realized how much I've been learning that applied. That is awesome to hear. I bet you'll know more about some subjects, perhaps, than some of them on the team. I'm just going on a hunch. Don't show them all your skills at once, though. You don't want to play all your cards. Not at once. Gotta leave some mystery. See? There are others that came for different roles. What'd I tell you? Not just blowing smoke. I mean that. It's awesome. Love hearing that. Cool. Well, today. Okay, so we got a big class going on today. So we are finally going to dive into cyber threat intelligence. Finally, we're going to talk about what it is, what it isn't, really break it down nicely, I think in a way that is relatable and understandable, instead of throwing a ton of acronyms and jargon at you and hoping that it sticks. We're going to be talking about cyber threat intelligence types of intelligence, sources where you can get this kind of information from, or data, I should say. We're going to talk about the life cycle. So how does cyber threat intelligence actually get compiled? Like how do we produce it? How do we define what intelligence actually is? And that actually starts from requirements, going right back to the beginning. So we're going to be talking about the life cycle. We're going to be looking at some data models and frameworks as well too, to help us constrain and guardrail us into producing high quality intelligence. We're going to be looking at things like MITRE ATT&CK as a nice little framework to rely upon. We're going to be looking at the kill chain, pyramid of pain, and even a little bit of a fun intro to things like the diamond model and other frameworks. We're going to be looking at threat intelligence reports, industry reports as well too, and I think that's going to be the gist of it. So we actually have a lot to go through today, but I think by the end of it, you should have a pretty good idea about what this domain is actually all about, and you should also feel, I would say, somewhat comfortable going and producing your own intelligence. That's the goal. That is the goal. So we got a lot to cover. Y'all ready? I totally failed that. I should have just said y'all ready for this. I don't know why I just stopped right there. Let that coffee kick in. Let's see. Let me see some engagement. Let me see some excitement in the chat. It's Saturday. You should be excited. This is your weekend. We're going to be having some fun. Are you ready? Are you ready to dive into threat intel? All right, that's a bit better. Thanks, Tom. All right, there we go. Okay. All right. Excited about these frameworks. Let's do this. Jacopo's ready with a fireball. Okay. I mean, if that's the case, then I think we can get started. Coffee's still kicking in, Cap. I feel you, man. Cool. Okay. So, class 27. Can you believe it? Class 27 on cyber threat intelligence. Crazy. Still going. So let's take a look at where we're at in the grand scheme of things. SOC 100 stream calendar. So we are down over here. So we have cyber threat intelligence going through today, and then report writing tomorrow. And next week is a little bit of DFIR and virtual SOC kickoff. Finally, I think we've taught you enough. You've been going at this since October 12th. Can you believe it? Since October 12th. And now on February 15th, you're going to be introduced to your virtual SOC and actually going through your tickets. You're going to apply everything that you've been learning. Crazy. So let's dive into it and get through all these things. A lot to go into. KS, what's going on? Yeah, lurking mode. Lurking mode's cool. Anyone wants to lurk, go ahead. Okay. Get my setup all ready over here so I can see my screen. Got the chat over there. All right. So we're going to talk about cyber threat intelligence, and in a few minutes, you will have learned everything you need to know about it, and then you can log off for the day. Okay? No, I'm not selling snake oil over here. But I'm going to make this real simple for you. Okay? All right. We're going to start off kind of like high level, what it is. And then you're going to realize as we go through all this exactly how much of it is actually quite simple. But it gets overly convoluted, I think. Okay, so cyber threat intelligence. What is it? What is it? Well, it's information. Okay? It's information at the end of the day. Bearded, morning. Cyber threat intelligence is information. And just like information, imagine you were to go out to buy a car. You needed a new car. You would want information to what? To make an informed decision. Information provides the ability to make informed decisions. Hence information, to inform. If you don't have it, you're just making a decision. And you're flipping a coin. You're going on a hunch, you're going on intuition, which isn't bad, but it's not necessarily evidence-driven. And that's what we need to stick around with. This is why we need information. So we're getting away from anecdote, we're getting away from hunches and gut feelings and intuition, which all have their places. But we are trying to get information to make a decision. And just like when you want to buy a car, you want to know how reliable it is, the speed, the mileage, the maintenance level, all to make the best decision with what? What do you have to obtain that car? What's the transaction? Your money. Yes. Dollar bills. Your money. Your money. Cash. And what do you have to invest in to get that money, to get that cash? Your skills, your work. Yeah. Skills, work. A lot of that comes down to a bit of a variable over here. Time. Best use your resources and time. 2, cybersecurity, right? Cybersecurity is largely, we've talked about this from GRC and other modules as well too, largely the domain. It is a risk management domain around cyber risk, right? So before I can even say it, if cyber threat intelligence is information to best use your resources and time, what is it for? Let's hear it. Take a guess. Take a stab at it. Proactive defense to keep the company making cash. Yeah. Company's got to run. Business has got to run. It's got to make money. What is this information ultimately for, though? Because that is the byproduct. That's the result, or that's the outcome. To keep the company running, making money. That's what we do in this field. We are non-revenue generating. So we have to, we have to protect assets. So information to protect assets, or what else? What constitutes cyber risk? Let's go back to GRC. There are 3 things we're worried about when we're trying to ensure cyber, or rather, I don't want to say it. What are the 3 things that constitute cyber risk? Am I going too hard on y'all? Right off the bat, right out of the gates? Yeah, okay. Nice. KS, yes. So there's 3 things, right? Information. 2, mitigate. Cyber risk, which It is a compromise to CIA, right? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Yeah, Doug's saying using that information resource time to identify potential cyber threats. Yeah, hey, SOC 100 crew. What's going on, CI? Had to do pass reset again? That's too bad. So, it is information to mitigate cyber risk, which comes as a compromise to one of those three things, the CIA. So this makes it easier to digest in a sense, because when you want to go buy a car, right? We talked about that. You want to spend your money wisely. And there's a variety of things that you want to look at. Well, when it comes to cyber threat intelligence, what we're looking for is ultimately intelligence, which is information that can help us best prevent or mitigate any compromise to confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Now, that's a blanket way of summarizing what it is. Because if I were to say that this is a formula, well, this doesn't apply to everyone equally the same. Because different threats do different things and impact or compromise one of these three tiers in a lesser or greater way. Additionally, your company is going to be more or less concerned about one of these things, about one of those threats in different ways. So just as you would go to a dealership to purchase a car, your requirements, thanks, Bearded, your requirements are going to be different. Your requirements are going to be unique to you. So if we were just looking at this right now, this summary is not really cyber threat intelligence yet. What we've really declared at this point in the game, if we were to stop right here, this is actually still just GRC. Okay? There is a strong similarity in terms of the intention of what it is. GRC is quite similar in a sense where you are looking for information which is in the form of frameworks, whether they're published or established by the nation or the industry or a law in some shape or form that you have to follow or you should follow to ultimately mitigate your cyber risk profile. The same thing. So up until this point, we are going down the route to get to cyber threat intelligence, but all what we've actually established is just GRC. That's it. That's all we've actually established so far, but there is still a strong overlap. So what makes it different? What is the jump? Like, how does this become CTI? What qualifiers are we missing here? There's largely three. Okay? You probably haven't considered it in this lens before, have you? And there's a reason why I'm working through this chronologically to get the explanation across and hit the point home. There's a gap. There is a jump. Karina is saying maybe particular intel on the adversary and on the target. Yes, that's half of it. There's something still missing there, though. I'll put it this way. If you and I, Karina, were at a dealership and you were trying to buy a car and I was trying to buy a car, the car is the car. Like, it has the same qualifiers depending on, not depending rather, but it has the same qualifiers regardless. It is that car. It has a shape, size, weight, cost, mileage, properties, etc. So what's the difference? Like, why would I and you, why would we look at that car and make a different decision? What is it about that particular scenario? Different needs, yes. Different needs. Absolutely. Different needs, different risks. Yeah. I might want to go and drive that car as fast as I can off-road. You might not. So, what happens when we are looking at information? How does it actually become a form of cyber threat intelligence? Well, there's actually 3 qualifiers that we like to refer to. One of them is that it has to be actionable. Okay. One of them, which is probably the most important of them all, I would say, is that it has to be relative. And the other one is that it has to be timely. So we like to call this an art. This is when you know you have cyber threat intelligence, when it's meeting this criteria. Because up until now, if we were to have just provided anything, it would have just been a suggestion, it would have been a checklist, it would have been applicable to everyone. And if we have information that is for everyone, then it's information for no one. That's how you need to think about it. So these 3 kind of qualifiers over here is what separates that GRC level of information to become cyber threat intelligence, because now we have relativity. This now makes me... This is now information that is relative to just me and only me, and has a very unique property as a result. It has context, it has nuance, it has pros and cons, it has considerations. It becomes a business level form of intelligence for you, or a personal level of intelligence for you. And thus, while it could be observable or helpful to other people, it's not something that they could take and then apply to themselves, because the needs are different. Additionally, it also has to be actionable. It has to be something that we can take and act with right away. And in terms of being able to act with something right away, the other qualifier that makes these 2 kind of work together, so actionable and timely sort of go hand in hand, actually. You know when something is actionable when you know how soon you need to act on it is. If I know that I have to make a decision on something today, then I'm going to have to make that decision today, right? I have to prioritize that. That becomes a priority. But if I know that I can make that decision next week, then other things will take priority. And cyber threat intelligence is supposed to provide you that level of information to make, again, informed decisions. So CTI helps us mitigate cyber risks, and those cyber risks are things that could compromise the CIA of our organization, but in a manner that is actionable, that we know when and how soon we need to act on it, what's the degree, what's the impact, what are the specific things that we need to do, and most importantly, it's the things that we have to do, and only us, not anyone else. Anyone else can look at it for recommendations or an observation, but it's not going to be fully applicable to them. It's a study, it's research still. And that's a really important thing, because there is a huge bucket of stuff that happens over here. Okay? This is the research phase. And then finally, you get CTI. And you only get CTI when you have these 3 qualifiers going on. Anything, if you cannot say that you have those 3 qualifiers, then you're still in the research phase. That's it. Class dismissed. That's really it. I'm not kidding. After this, we get into best practices, we get into the process of it, we get to dedicated roles, we get to the different ways that organizations do it, the different preferences, the different report formats, the different tools that utilize the threat intelligence that we create and we distill, and that we disseminate, all that good stuff. Sure, all that stuff is all going to be a little different between different organizations and different outfits and different needs. But this is it. It doesn't actually get more complex than this in terms of what are the properties or the priorities of what CTI actually is. If you can walk away from today just understanding this level of what the properties of CTI actually are, then I think these are your guardrails. Like this is your boundary for you to work in, to be able to understand if you're on target, if you're delivering something that makes sense, if you're communicating something that makes sense to someone, that it meets their needs. If you're delivering a report that should be compiled as cyber threat intelligence, and that could be a report, it could be documentation, it could be an email, it could be a message, it could be a phone call, it could be a number of things. The format of cyber threat intelligence will be entirely dependent on the needs of who needs it. So don't get too hung up on it has to be this fleshed out report, it has to be an industry breach report, it has to be a threat report. It could be a Twitter, it could be a Reddit post, a Twitter post, it could be an email, it could be something very simple, it could be a blog. It could be in many different shapes and forms, but ultimately it becomes cyber threat intelligence when we have these three inherent properties to it. So if you are delivering something to someone and they're unclear, if they cannot make a decision with the information you've provided, then you haven't provided threat intelligence. You've provided a recommendation, and you're therefore missing the relativity piece. You're not able to describe it in such a way that it becomes relative to their needs, and they need more information from you. And if you keep on doing that, you're actually still just living in that GRC space, which has its own intention and purpose with what we've talked about. GRC is fantastic for a broad, wide net. You cast that out there, you give it to the industry and say, okay, these are the general guidelines of what you should be following and adhering to. And then you have GRC analysts and professionals to deploy those recommendations. And that's when those professionals make it more relative to the business. And they work with teams internally, etc., to figure out how to best implement it and make roadmaps and gap analyses and all that. But threat intelligence takes it a step further. And this is where, when you are closing your SOC analyst tickets, this is when you are performing research on emerging threats, this is when you have found an indicator of compromise or attack on your network or a pattern. It comes in so many shapes and forms. And then what do? You prepare research on it, ultimately to communicate to someone to make a decision. Someone takes that decision. Someone takes that information and they make a decision to what? To do this, to mitigate these three forms. So, what can we say about this? Is that the actionable component over here actually has to have a degree of what is the impact to the CIA. If you have that, then you know what decision you have to make. The relativity piece is going to make it unique to the business, and the timely, like I said, kind of feeds into the actionable part. So if you have all these components, you will have provided high quality, high confidence, and permission leveled intelligence to someone on a need-to-know basis. Now, students actually struggle with this quite a bit, that I've learned from over the years. And this is why we've sort of refined it in such a way to make it make sense and immediately understandable, because a lot of students will get hung up on just the research piece and formatting. Like, oh, am I meeting the right criteria? Do I have the right sections in my report? Am I using the right tool? Am I using closed or open source intelligence and all that? But they're missing the mark on that final deliverability. What is it? What is the thing that we're trying to deliver? And this is what it is. So yes, Bearded, as long as it meets the art, and that is your self-assessment guide. If you look back on your report or your deliverable and it doesn't have these properties, it will either be rejected or asked to be made clearer. And we get there by working through tried and true tested processes and best practices to research and compile that information, which is ultimately going to be what is trying to mitigate an impact or compromise to the CIA. Make sense? Easy Does It says this reminds me so much of sales. Yeah, I mean, it's actually quite similar. Yes. In sales, right? Like, you are looking for information to inform your customer, or you're preparing or delivering information to inform your customer or your rep to make a decision to make a purchase. Now, sales gets a little bit skewed, obviously, because you want to present a certain narrative that will influence the customer to buy it, as opposed to just making a bias-free decision and just informing them as is. Cyber threat intelligence is not so much correlated to a narrative or an influence. It is just providing, it's letting the evidence do the work for you, and then you compile your story based from that, and that only. So your narrative, your editorializing is non-existent in cyber threat intelligence. Okay, I think we're done. I think we're done for the day then, everyone. That's it. That's it. That's it. Spirit is saying this makes documentation a lot easier. I had a ticket with an executable file and I had to do threat intel on the file hash compared to the file has on vendor site. Yeah. Yep. It's just keeping yourself in line with it. Now, notice how I've prepared this in such a way, and I'm walking you through it. There's multiple steps going on here, right? Like if you look at my iPad notes as we're going through, this is a distilled process. You don't just wake up and start producing cyber threat intelligence. There are some prerequisites. Okay, so we want to have a baseline, right? Normal. Not normal. We want to have a security program in place. And we want to have a level of security maturity, which truthfully is sort of like a tier, right? Tier of GRC, which we talked about already. Tiers of GRC. So it's not something that you can just sort of start producing right away. I mean, it'll happen by the nature of whatever your job might be. So like Beard, for example, right? Making documentation a lot easier. So he had a ticket with a binary and had to do threat intelligence on the file hash. Okay. So like you will immediately just be doing it within your roles. That's just going to happen. But like a dedicated cyber threat intelligence analyst who's in this field, this is a late stage function of an organization. And it's not necessarily a function of every organization either. You typically won't have dedicated roles for this in like your just like your general business. Like if you're at a company that had like a sysadmin, a couple technicians running around, and you had like a small SOC, as we've said before, you might not even have a small SOC. It might just be outsourced to an MSP or something, and you might not even have in-house IT. That might also be outsourced as well. But you typically aren't going to be seeing dedicated cyber threat intelligence analysts or professionals in every organization. So cyber threat intelligence becomes a function or a task of the various roles. So like in Bearded's case over there, if he had to go and compile closing notes on his ticket and wrap that up, well, he would be thinking about this. How much of an art is inside of that closing documentation? And the more he can provide, the more he can get accurately to those properties, the better his intelligence will be. Which we'll talk about a little bit later, about like the quality of your intelligence. Because me just saying, okay, well, yeah, sure, just make it actionable, make it relative, make it timely, right? Yeah, like sure, this is a late derivative function of something or a role, or is a more evolved version of GRC, if you will. Even like I could throw a lot of different ways to explain it, but the degree of the actionable, relative, and timely properties of the intelligence you provide will determine the quality of it. So there is a scale. You can get better at this. You can communicate better. You can distill things faster. You can break things down faster into their individual parts. So CTI is actually derivative So CTI is actually derivative of forms of research and thinking. So when we talk about like systems thinking, or we talk about first principles, when we talk about like the 3-pass method, when we talk about the essentially practice that you've had to develop of doing this type of work, then the quality of what you'll be able to provide is much better. Jordan, you got to hop off? Yeah, all good. On a mission to finish it up? Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds good. Enjoy the networking module. Reach out in Discord if you need help with anything, and we'll see you back in CTI when you catch up to it. So does this kind of make all sense so far, everyone? Does this make all sense? Does all of this make sense? I think that's what I'm trying to say. So research is like the heaviest part. Research is going to be what determines the efficiency and effectiveness of your result. It's not the heaviest part. But it will determine how efficient you are with it. What's going on, Woke? Are you saying that this evolves and or gets more mature? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, and not even so much like the org, but even the students themselves, and professionals. The more you work through this, because if something is derivative, then that means that it's also iterative. That means that the more you do it, the better you will get with it, because it's derived from something else. So the more that you can compile your findings and find relatable ways, or relative ways, I should say, to deliver that information in a way that someone understands it to be actionable and timely, the better it will be. Now, the heaviest part, I would say, kind of going back to CI, is not so much the research part, because remember, that's the effectiveness and the efficiency of it all, your ability to perform. And we're going to talk about that CTI lifecycle soon. There is a process to this, generally speaking. But the heaviest part is actually the requirements. So I was going to start off with that. It all starts with requirements. Kind of going back to what I was talking about before with the cars, right? Starts here. Why am I even in the dealership in the first place to go and buy a car? Right? What's the point? Why am I there? I talked a lot about us being in that dealership already, but did any of you stop and think for a moment? Bearded to get in debt? Okay, well, awesome. Yeah, Bearded, if you want to get in debt, then have I got the car for you. It is the fastest, smoothest, best ride out there, and you're going to enjoy it every single time you get off the lot. It's going to be the most expensive car here, and it's made just for you, for people like you that really want to enjoy their ride getting around. If that's your requirement, then you are at the right dealership. Okay? Yeah, CI. So it depends on your wants, right? Doug, level effect just became multi-abilities you want to celebrate. Hell yeah. So, look. The hardest part is defining your requirements. So like your intelligence production requirements. What is it that you actually need to know, first of all? That's the hardest part. And then your ability to research quickly and compile dissimilar information, the ability to compare and contrast, to look at two different data sources, to look at biased and non-biased data sources, and then put a story and narrative together. That's the research. That comes with experience and time. Your ability to do that better and be more efficient, more effective with your time will improve. That's just going to happen the more you do this kind of stuff. which ultimately will be able to deliver something of higher quality. However, what you even need to start off with is the hardest part, and that's the requirements. So like going back to Bearded's ticket over there, right? Going back up in chat, he had to go and perform intelligence or prepare intelligence on the file hash of this binary on his ticket compared to the fake one, or compared to the file that was on the vendor site. So let's dial that back, right? When he had to perform this exercise, his ability to understand how to compare two binaries was the hardest part. He had, like, if he didn't understand file hashes, which we've covered, if he didn't understand file forensics, if he didn't understand the file header, the metadata sections inside of a file, if he didn't understand like the .text, remember we looked at the PE file format, if he didn't understand those sections of how a file actually is compiled or prepared or written of, and if he didn't understand that a hash is a representative stamp of that file, if he didn't understand these things, he wouldn't know where to start to begin his intelligence. You see what I mean? So that is the hardest part, is the knowledge of getting there and the ability to quickly discern what you need to do and where to start is the bulk of the initial work. Now, to that end, if the requirements, if your foundational knowledge is not that secure, if it is missing, if there are gaps, and this is why, now that we're finally here, I think this will be quite clear to everyone. This is why when students are first starting to study cybersecurity or getting through triage scenarios or any of the challenges in the course, and you're like, I don't know what to do. That's because your requirements, the ability for you to define what are my requirements to complete this exercise or complete this triage, you can't define them. And you get stuck. That's why. That's why you can't get through it. And this is why that's the hardest part. And if you get that right, everything else gets easier because you know what to look for. And then how fast you get through it just comes with time and experience. Does that make sense? Is it all kind of like coming back together now? Why it's so important to have the foundational knowledge? I hope so. Joe, yeah. I'll give you an example, and I like to use this example a lot. Okay. If I were to go and say, okay, everyone in chat, I need a picture of nighttime traffic at this intersection to make a decision on how busy it is. Okay. So I go inside here and I say, nighttime traffic image. And you went and you gave me this image. What does that do for me? I mean, you delivered. I asked you for an image of nighttime traffic. I want to know how busy an intersection is. Is this not what I asked for? Is it? I can't see the number of cars? Well, I didn't define that, did I? It's very abstract. Yeah, easy. Yeah. You need a baseline of comparison. It's not the right kind of information. I mean, this is why I'm using this image, because it's quite immediately, like, intuitively clear, right? We can all understand if I was looking for an image of nighttime traffic on an intersection to determine how busy it was, you sort of just like naturally understand. There's a lot of information that I didn't ask you for, but you just generally understand because that's a very common it's a question that is built off of common needs that you don't need to define. And what this is called is that this is called context. If we do not define our requirements clearly, this is a very exaggerated example of what the outcome could actually look like. You might spend a whole lot of time, weeks, preparing a report, and then you deliver the report to someone, and when they look at the report, it looks like this. It's not quantitative information, yeah. But, like, Karina, you know that because you have some experience. You have some... And this is why... This is why I've even said, like, in other classes and such, that cybersecurity is largely a domain that is... You're going to see a lot of people that are, like, mid-career. Like we've said, cybersecurity is not entry-level. It is mid-level IT. It is a subset of other experience in your life, professionally and personally. You typically see people in, like, later stages of their career, or they've been in another career, or they've had a lot of life experience in some shape or form, and then they're entering this field. And typically, the more senior professionals are older. They've had a lot of time under the belt for this reason, because when I ask for an image of nighttime traffic at an intersection to determine how busy it is, it's implied and understood by just about anyone, regardless of their life, that you want to know, like, how many cars are actually on the road and not a blur of the cars. But when it comes to cyber threat intelligence, your experience is going to help you define all of those little bits of needs to make sure that the requirements are clear, that you're researching the right things, that you're not going down rabbit holes, that you're focusing on the right information, and that you're able to sort of keep yourself in check. There's a lot of that. And then finally, instead of that image, you'll be able to give someone something like this. And this is clear right off the bat. I know how busy this intersection is now with nighttime traffic. So going from this image to this image is the difference in experience and foundational understanding to deliver two different reports. A high quality report would deliver something like this to make a decision, and a low quality or inexperienced report or documentation would look like this. It's not helpful. It's a general idea. There's a lot of blurs. Okay, I guess there's traffic. I just don't know how much. But there is traffic. I do know that there's traffic here at night. Okay. But this image, this result is much clearer and is much more specific. And what are the three properties that we're talking about? There's enough information here that I can make an actionable and timely decision on this information and what I need to do. And it's relative to my needs. So going back to it all, right? Cyber threat intelligence is information to best use your resources and your time to mitigate cyber risk, which is a compromise to one or more of the CIA. However, that's still GRC at that stage. It's missing some properties. And it becomes threat intelligence when we are able to deliver something that is actionable, relative, and timely. So those three properties of it are important. That's how we get to cyber threat intelligence. And we get there by performing research. The research that we kind of lead off on from this section above, we do a lot of research to ultimately deliver CTI, which is comprised of those three inherent properties. And there are prerequisites to understand what we need to do, and that is to have a baseline, what is normal, what is not normal, typically have a security program or GRC level in place, and we have maturity as well. of how effective we are with our current process and our current understanding of our baseline. And ultimately, this is all going to begin with the ability to define very clear requirements of what we need to do before we even begin that research. Magister, thanks for the sub as well during all that. Does that make sense, everyone? Clear. Awesome. Oh, fix up my image over there. Laptop. Awesome. Okay, cool. Exciting, huh? Okay, so let's take a little bit of a break now. And then we're going to come back and talk a little bit about we're going to talk about a couple different terms. So we're going to talk about the types of threat intelligence, and then we're going to talk a little bit about bias as well. Those are some hard parts to understand. Okay. Infested, thanks for the follow. All right, let's take a break. Go refill the coffees. Oh, 07. Good to have you here, Infested. All right, we're back. Back in action. Let's go, everyone. Hope everyone got some coffee. Ready to talk more about CTI stuff. Okay. All right. So how do we actually get to producing some of this stuff? Well, CTI can largely be contributed to 4 different types. So when we're compiling information, there's effectively 4 things that we are looking for. Where they end up, where they land inside of a report. CI back to favorite module. Yeah, you know it. CTI and GRC and adversary tactics. Those are, it's my jam. So there's 4 types, or I should say categories. We call them types, but there's categories of information, or like buckets that we can put information into to determine how to compile and how to prepare and how to disseminate this information to someone. So there's CTI. Yeah. CTI types. Okay. Not so much behaviors. We'll get there soon, though. CI, we're going to start talking a little bit more about frameworks and such. So, the first one being, so we have strategic. Strategic intelligence. Number 2, we have operational intelligence. Number 3, we have tactical and then number 4, and sometimes number 3 and 4 can overlap. It can just happen depending. But the last one would be technical. So when we're looking for information to communicate some type of report documentation, again, to mitigate the CIA level of risk that's constituent to the threat that we have at hand, we can categorize them in 4 different things. So strategic intelligence would be effectively something like, maybe like a broad narrative, sort of thinking about like emerging trends, general risks that might be emergent in a certain business or industry sector. And this also can be applied directly to a threat itself. So we're talking about the strategy of a threat actor. Well, what is their intention? What is their general play style? What are they likely to do, or what have they done before? And you can think about this like playing a game. I like to think a lot of intelligence is like a war game. There's wargaming exercises and scenarios for this reason, is to be able to prepare intelligence on your threat or your opponent or your enemy, and then make a decision to best defend or outsmart or outwit them. It's a lot like playing a game. So when you think about strategic intelligence of your opponent or your adversary or your threat, what is their play style? What are they likely to do? So you can think about it like that. And then when we talk about operational, we are thinking about what is the level of sophistication. So when we know how our opponent plays, maybe our opponent always plays offensive or defensive. Well, how good are they? How skilled are they? What are they capable of? Are they capable of a good 3-pointer, or do they always run up to the net and shoot close? So operational intelligence is the sophistication, the capabilities and sophistication of your threat or your threat actor. Okay. So like how they carry out? No, not yet. So how they do it, like how they actually play, what are their specific moves? Well, now we get into tactical. Tactical is the specific tactics. This is where we get the TTPs. So we're looking at tactics, techniques, and procedures. Yeah, okay. On screen, yeah. Techniques. Okay. So now we're talking about, like, are they going to spearfish you? Like, what do they actually do? So let's say we have a threat that is targeting the healthcare sector. That's their general strategy. Their capabilities and their sophistication is that they've carried out 7 out of 10 of their latest attacks have been successful. So they're sophisticated. Their tactical intelligence on this matter might be that they spearfish you. That is their common initial entry point. Their initial foothold is spearfishing. Then, after this, they like to look for stored credentials. They like to pivot and look for stored credentials by local administrative accounts or local services that the account has access to that might be privileged. So they look for stored credentials to perform some level of pivot. And thinking back towards like the SOC 100-2 content we've covered so far, when we talked about the like persistence mechanisms that were deployed, so maybe they have an auto run. Okay, that's more familiar with what we've dealt with at this point in time. Maybe there's an auto run in the registry that they deploy. That would be tactical. So these are TTPs. So when we're talking about communicating what we need to do to mitigate this cyber threat, which actually constitutes as cyber risk, well, we can now define what is the strategic intelligence that we need to make a decision on how they might play against us, and their level of sophistication and capabilities, and also what are they likely to do. You see how it starts to get more and more relative? The more we can compile information on this threat or this adversary, we can focus on things that are directly applicable and relative to what they're capable of, but also what are we capable of defending. So if we know by doing research on this threat that they're capable of these specific play styles and they will spearfish and they will look for pivoting and they will deploy an auto run, well, we can ask ourselves, then we might ask ourselves, right? Then we might ask ourselves, do we have the defenses for this? And you see, that is a very different, stark, contrasting comparison to GRC. It's the same intention, but how derivative it gets, it becomes a lot more focused on what the threat or the adversary is capable of doing and what they will do. And also, what are we able to do back to it? What are our capabilities? And then we get into things like technical, because once we've defined that they might perform an auto run deployment, okay, well, what is the technical level of intelligence that we need to know about this? Like, is this do they always deploy something like user patch.bat? Like, is that the file that they put? So technical gets very, very specific. We're talking about like IPs, domains, hashes. So Bearded, in your case, going back to you, I'm just picking on you a lot over here because you described the recent ticket, so it's fresh in my head. You were compiling technical intelligence. Your research on the hash to see if it matched what was on the ticket versus the vendor website, you were actually researching technical intelligence. That is where we get things like IPs, domains, hashes, etc. So these are specific. like very, very specific pieces of technical information that we can work with. We can put them inside of detection rules, firewalls, block lists, proxies, you name it, scanners, all that stuff. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the pyramid of pain as a model coming up, but as a quick like precursor to that, knowing this information now, let's think about this from the bottom up, going from technical to strategic. It's probably harder for an adversary or threat to change what they're going to do working up from number 4 to 1. As we've seen, IPs, domains, top-level domains, you name it, it's all quite ephemeral. Like, this stuff can change on the fly. It can be detonated. It can be reproduced. It can be changed and altered. The tactical level of this is a little bit harder to change, but it's still not impossible to change because they've probably spent a lot of time working on their ability to retrieve stored credentials. And then how good they are at it is even harder to change because maybe they've also invested a lot of time on that specific TTP, but by spending a lot of time on it means that when we're looking at an opportunity cost, they've spent a lot of time investing in the ability to perform that TTP. Therefore, they are not going to be good in other areas. So they are less likely to do things that they're not good at, logically speaking. Strategically now, overall, if that's their play style, that's probably going to be the hardest thing that they're going to change because they've spent so much time drilling down, getting better at their overall attack, or the threat has gotten so proficient at doing what it does that it is less likely to change the more it goes up these tiers. It doesn't mean that it won't, but it's less likely to. Does that make sense? You see, this becomes quite logical. And this is why I said your ability to look at things very like pragmatically and from like a systems level of thinking, first principles driven, evidence driven, and being very like practiced and well knowledgeable on your research abilities is going to allow you to think about things like this. Even if we didn't have the pyramid of pain, we could look at this logically and ask ourselves a question. If we wanted to defend against a threat, knowing what we know of it, we want to spend time on investing resources to defend against it, and that's going to take us time, so we want to make sure we get it right. And in order to get it right, well, how likely is it that this threat or adversary will continue to do what they do? That will give us that degree of rightness or correctness or accuracy and precision. So intelligence, as Bearded did, he got himself some good technical intelligence comparing the hashes. If he wanted to improve the quality now of his intelligence, he should be considering, okay, well, where did the file come from? Like, what is the TTP related to that binary being on the ticket in the first place that was triggered to cause that alert? How did it get there? And then he can start doing some evaluation on the capability. Like, how good of an attack was this? How effective was it? How refined was it? How sophisticated was it? Was this something really simple that the user just clicked on, or was this a layered, obfuscated attack with multiple layers of encryption and encoding, etc.? You see what I mean? So now Bearded can work up on the quality of intelligence, but this will also be that will also be determined by, like, what are the resources that he has? How much time is he given to work on this ticket? Maybe this is all he needs to do. Maybe the requirement was just compare the hash. And if he met the requirement, then he delivered intelligence and he's able to complete that ticket and wrap it up. So you see, cyber threat intelligence is a part of his role. It is a function. It's a property of being a cybersecurity professional. And some roles will be purely dedicated to it. Some will just have it embedded and intertwined in their day-to-day tasks. What do y'all think? What are your thoughts? I could talk about CTI all day, but what do you think so far? Bearded, really good information. Yeah, little light bulbs going on. Mm-hmm. One of the harder ones. Yeah. Sneeze. One of the harder ones for sure. Karina's enjoying learning. Yeah. Definitely changes the approach to working on things. Totally. Right. Yeah. This is how you start to get better with CTIs, when you start thinking about like qualifiers and what's actually being asked for. Okay, cool. So where do we get this information from? If you wanted to go buy that car in the dealership, right? You have what? You have brochures, you have commercials, you have the internet. You got the internet, right? You've got Reddit, websites. You've got a whole lot of open source intelligence that you can work with. So CTI, make sure I'm on the screen. Yeah, CTI sources. It kind of looks like Sorges. One second. Slow down on my writing over there. It's getting a little too chicken scratch for you. CI gets, yes, it gets easier. There's two things that you can do to improve on your overall CTI game. One, just get a better understanding of the foundations and the fundamentals of things. Two, work on learning more about research techniques and modes of reasoning and thinking. If you can do those two things, you will become a better threat intelligence analyst, or your CTI tier, like your ability to get better at it. Like if we're talking about like this is a game, right? Like your class tree, you want to put some points into you and kind of spec your ability to become better as like a CTI professional. Then you definitely want to invest in those tier areas. There's also, what was it called? I think it's called like cyber threat intelligence competency framework. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. Yeah, from Mandiant. Okay, here we go. Am I? Yeah, I'm showing that. Yeah, okay, cool. So there's actually, Mandiant has done a really good job, and this is a good link. I'll link this inside of the chat, inside Discord as well too. But this compiles a lot of what I'm already talking about. You'll notice that the students and professionals that do very well in this area typically have a lot of translatable experience professionally and personally in research-heavy focused disciplines in life or hobbies or interests. That's just how it is. It's not to say that they're better than you or you're worse than them. It's just that they have more time under the belt doing this stuff. So if you want to get yourself better in this area, this is a great framework to lean on. But you can see problem solving, professional effectiveness is a huge component. It's actually two of the major tiers, according to Mandiant. Technical literacy is the other one. It's what I mentioned. And cyber threat proficiency. So this is kind of why I lump some of it together in two different things. Your foundational fundamental understanding of technology and what you're dealing with is half of it, which is the two last tiers here anyways. And your ability to perform research and modes of reasoning and systems thinking and such is the other half. So this is why you can perhaps meet someone who is a very good researcher and report writer, but they will struggle with what to look for, but they can prepare and compile and disseminate high quality intelligence, but they're not strong on the technical side, and it kind of hinders them, and vice versa. This is where you can also encounter analysts or engineers or professionals that are extremely technical and can really understand how something works, but they cannot communicate it. And they have trouble researching and compiling information that supports the ability to provide that actionable, relative, timely level of intelligence to someone for them to understand. So it's a balancing act, and generally you want to be good in all these areas to be able to be stronger in this area. Easy does it say is that says that was your feedback for why you got hired. Your manager said the way that you think, and you're dedicated to increasing your technical side. 100%. And this is why we focus here a lot on like these two sides. Like, yes, we really hit you hard with our technical literacy and train you quite rigidly. Like, you're learning a lot of very tough subjects in SOC 100. We know this. Like, it's hard, but the harder part is not the technical literacy and threat proficiency. That is knowledge that you can consume and copy paste and get from intelligence sources. That's the easier part, honestly. The harder part is the problem solving and the professional effectiveness. Way harder. Way harder. Doug knows some people who works at Mandiant. If you want to talk to them about this threat hunting and how it ties in this model, let me know. Yeah, that'd be awesome, Doug. Yeah, it'd be great if you wanna bring them on over here. But take a look at that competencies framework. They do a great job helping you understand more about these specific areas. So, CTI sources. Where do we get this stuff from? As we've talked a little bit about, we have our OSINT. So closed source and open source intelligence, and then we have our closed source. Which I guess could be CSINT, but I've never actually heard it be called like that, so. Yeah. Easy does it, yeah. Doug, connected heavy, yeah, he is. Will Wise 101. Confidential informants, yeah. Like, what if Will Wise was a confidential informant? Right? Like, what if Will Wise 101 was our honeypot? You know, like, he's hanging out in the chat and you don't know, and then he is providing intelligence to level effect on what he's observing in the chat and Discord. Willwise would then be a form of closed source intelligence for level effect. Right? So open source intelligence, OSINT, is anything that we could look online. Like, there's no hindrance to it. There's no gate. There's no credentials required, really. It's open to the public. So this is just public information. We also have things like sandboxes, which we've learned about, right? Like virus total. That's right, Will. It's having a good laugh over there. Sandboxes, so a virus total, Joe sandbox, etc. Any.run, right? That's all information that we can get from things. Forums, social media, Intel feeds. Closed source. Closed source is going, and so I should actually preface before I say that, not relative. That's important to understand. These open source intelligence is not relative to you. Closed source is. And that's why it's so helpful. So this is where you get things like honeypots you can set up that are getting directly attacked by the threats that you are related to. Internal logs. And events. You could also have like commercial, like paid feeds over here, paid intel feeds. Tuned to you. So closed source is relative. So that's half the battle. Not half the battle. That's a third of the battle done for you. That's pretty big, right? If we know right off the bat that actionable, relative, timely intelligence is where we want to go, well, closed source intelligence is going to solve 1/3 of that for us right away and possibly get us on the right foot on actionable and timely. Huge. So if we're looking at our internal logs and events, well, this is why your SIEM is so important. Getting that set up properly. It's a natural form of closed source intelligence. So if you're at an interview or you're on the job and you're thinking about how you can improve the company's security posture and you want to make intelligence informed decisions on threats that are relative to you, well, you should be thinking about immediately, like, how good is your SIEM? How good is your security program at collecting and ingesting and normalizing and shaping logs and events for your organization? That's something you should definitely be asking for, right? CI saying, so art works together or it's not CTI? Art. So art is the is the properties of your intelligence that make it cyber threat intelligence. If your intelligence does not have the properties of it being art, then it is still data or research or at the GRC level. Jacopo, could dark web threat intelligence be considered an open source if someone is able to gather intel from it? Yes. And it's technically going to be open source if you can hop on there and take a look at it. And it can become relative to you if you're looking for information relative to your company. Like if you're looking for breached results, if you want to take a look at your company, if it's ever been hacked or your email address, right? Like let's do something like this. If I were to go to Have I Been Pwned, right? Whoops. Have I Been Pwned? Go here and put in your email address, right? So this is, I'm sure you've all seen this at some point before, right? But check if your email address was in a data breach. Okay, well, this is going to look up a lot of sources that this organization provides as a resource for you to go and put your email address in and see if you've actually been pwned. So has your email address ever come up on breaches? And it doesn't mean that it was actually breached. It could be fake. But if your email address has ever actually come up on there, go take a look. That's technically like using an open source tool that has some direct links to breach forums and breached data dumps, which you would find on dark web types of sources, which then becomes immediately relative to you. This is where like pen testers will use tools like Dehashed. And you can go inside here and you can search for a company and you pay for it. So you'll go here, you'll put in a company like, you know, level effect. Put a level effect over here or another company, and then see if there are any breach records of our email accounts or email addresses that are related to any public or closed password dumps. Corinne is saying, wow, 14.6 billion pwned accounts. Yeah. Keeps on going. It was pretty cool. Like, you're actually going to see recently added breaches. Thermomix, Hacko, Pwned Campus, OneWin, Dragon Nest, 9 Lives, Speed.io. Really cool. So like a pen tester or a red teamer or a threat actor could go here and put in the company's domain, and there may actually be breach records of email addresses with the passwords that they used, and then maybe they could try password reuse attacks. So if I found like Doug at goodcorp.com on here, and his password was I secretly love level effect, and I then found out that Doug logs on to Cyberkata with a VPN, and then I were to try Doug at goodcorp.com with I secretly love level effect as a password, then that might work. You see, like that's how you would do it. That's how you would use this form of intelligence to test the security perimeter and utilize it. So this is where you would get some examples and some sources of information. Doug, that's your real password, yeah. Damn, sorry, Doug. I shouldn't have said that out loud, man. Yeah. Okay, so the challenge, though, in all this is attribution. Okay? Because, I mean, this all sounds well and good, right? It's like, oh, yeah, cool. Like, I know what to look for. I've got intelligence sources. I can compile them into 4 types. I'm going to deliver the best damn report out there. Not so fast. There is a major challenge, and that is attribution. And I should say actually, attribution versus bias. There's 2 things there. Kind of get in the way. Attribution really is sort of like a balancing act. So I'll kind of draw it like as a visual. And this would be confidence and uncertainty. That's effectively, yeah, sorry, CI. That's effectively what attribution really is what is the degree of confidence versus uncertainty. And this is made up of things. So here you would have like your CTI types. And over here, you would have something like bias. This is what makes it so hard, is how are you able to attribute your findings with a level of confidence or uncertainty? And you weigh that by how much you've been able to come to conclusions on with the types of intelligence you've been able to collect versus bias. So when we talk about this, I always like to share this with students, is go take a look at our cognitive bias. How much we actually have. We've all went down rabbit holes. Sunk cost fallacy is a bias that we've committed our time into something and we need to see it through. So understanding bias is quite important because we're all victim to it. And here's a better way to think about it is, let's just say that I went to Have I Been Pwned and I put in like Doug at goodcorp.com, right? If I put that inside there, well, how do I know, how do I actually know that the quality of this website is good? I mean, I've told you that. I'm this guy in a stream talking about things, and I've told you, hey, check this out. You have some level of trust and confidence in me based on interacting with me and the classes that I've been streaming and teaching you, that, okay, well, Anthony's probably going to share a resource that he believes in. But do I believe in it? Have I vetted this person? Have you vetted this person? Have you vetted me? The problem with collecting open source intelligence is there's a lot of people copying people. And I think I've talked about this in another class, right? Broken Telephone, that game. When you share information between multiple sources going around, and by the time it comes back to you, it's going to have changed. So CTI also requires you to trust but verify. And you have to let the evidence guide you. It's very common for students when you first start off to go pull up reports, be like, oh, well, the report says so. Oh, Stack Overflow is the post that says that. Oh, they're talking about it on Reddit. Must be true. Like, here, if I go to Reddit right now, right? Just want to make sure. Okay, I'm not logged in. All right. Let's go to Reddit, and I'm going to go to cybersecurity. All right, let's go to CyberSec. Here's a post. Degrees and certs are not replacement for experience. If you get your intelligence from everything just like random forums, I don't know. How do you know that this is true? Reddit is a website that is built around effectively like gaining karma. Like you gain karma the more people are upvoting you. Inherently, Reddit has, so the bias of Reddit is the only way you can get more to the top and more voted up and more recognized and more attention to your posts and forums is if you're saying more of the same thing that everyone else believes. So like inherently by design, there is a bias to what you will read on Reddit. So Doug's saying, yeah, trust forums like 4chan. Well, I mean, look at 4chan. I'm not going to go there right now because what will maybe pop up on my screen. But if you go to 4chan, 4chan doesn't have this karma system. It's just like, here's a wide dump of stuff. Go read what you want. But it doesn't have a karma system like Reddit, where you want to be saying what everyone else is saying. So Reddit is like a super echo chamber per subreddit, but naturally by design. So you have to take that into consideration with what you read here. Now, it's not to say that everyone on Reddit is just repeating one another, but I'm saying generally the design of it is to get upvotes by saying the same things that everyone likes to read and see and hear that they also believe in. So you see there's a bit of a problem with that, logically speaking. If you're trying to find intelligence, maybe take what you can with a grain of salt from a website like Reddit. Similarly, if you go to social media, it's very similar, right? If you go to LinkedIn, the posts that get the most attention are the ones that have the most likes and the most comments. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the post was true. Bearded gets their news from tarot card readers. Yeah. So what you can do, like, here's a post, right? A 25-year-old is writing backdoors into the Treasurer's $6 trillion payment system. What could possibly go wrong? I don't know. What could go wrong? A 25-year-old is writing backdoors. Well, I've recalled many young threat actors in their late teens to early 20s that were very sophisticated and actually know a lot more than people in their 30s and 40s with 20 years of experience, and I might trust these younger kids more. Or I might not trust them because they don't have the life experience, but they have the knowledge, so maybe they could be corrupted or easily manipulated. You see what I mean? If you're thinking about this from a cyber threat intelligence perspective, you have to try to look and question yourself inward logically and break things down, because if you don't, there is a very high likelihood that you could fall victim to bias by reading a post like this, which will potentially see comments like this. How much you want to bet most of the code changes came straight from AI outputs? Well, why? Why is that even a thing to believe? But it got a lot of upvotes and it's the first post. Why should a 25-year-old use AI? How do I know that this person is not using AI? You see what I mean? So you have to be quite careful with your intelligence collection. The intelligence collection is a very difficult part. So what do we have instead? Well, we have companies, right? If you go to like Mandiant, APT report, this is why you have dedicated firms. This is kind of like why we have the news. The news should be presenting impartial, nonpartisan news. Like, that's what the news is supposed to provide. It's supposed to provide just the news. Like, that's why the saying is, like, I'm just here to read you the news. The news stops being news once it becomes skewed or one-sided to a narrative. Okay, so if you go, this is why we still have companies like Mandiant and other companies that are just dedicated intelligence firms, and we're going to look at this report today about, like, what does an actual highly regarded threat intelligence report look like? Doug gets all of his news from The Onion. Yeah. I have to be careful. Anybody can say anything. Yeah. Well, look, I mean, it was years that a lot of people were just like, oh yeah, go get your Security Plus and go get a job in security. And it kind of worked when there was a huge demand for it. But then you had a lot of people freaking out and burning out with anxiety and imposter syndrome because they didn't actually know what to do. So it does work. Like, the general, like, consensus is a social engineering tactic for a reason. If everyone is saying it and everyone is doing it, why aren't you? Zeno is saying channel light beams from UAVs using C5 protocols. Yeah, they told you telepathically. I know, damn. All those telepathic readers and UAPs out there. If only I could, like, speak to them and say, hey, send more people level effect. Doug's saying, but yeah, but how are they creating backdoors? Did they get a script from a legit hacker or dark web hacker forum like I showed you all, right? All that person, and that person is not a legit hacker, but a script kiddie, and they just found a script and it worked. Doesn't mean they understood it. Exactly. So, like I said, attribution, like your level to say, yes, this is the threat and this is what they will do, comes with your ability to perform unbiased, non-biased research. And you're fighting your own internal bias and you're fighting the bias of everyone else out there in that phase to provide something. That's the hardest part. That's what I'm saying. The problem solving, the critical thinking is the hardest part, because an IP address is just an IP address. Like, there is no bias to that technical piece of information, but the more you go up the ladder of CTI types, the harder it gets to discern how true this actually is. Pandem saying, yeah, you got your Psych Plus a year ago, still working as a help desk? Yeah, that's the case. That's what it's like now. I hope SOC 100 could help you. I know that we've had a couple students here already that have started in security. I'm not saying we're taking all the credit for that, but I hope that it's helped them, and I hope that it'll help you as well too. Or the Sec Plus, as we've talked about, as a certification, Easy does the SOC 100 will definitely help. Thanks. It's good to hear. Theoretical certifications are fantastic for learning the terms and vocabulary, that vernacular, the ability to understand what things are, and it reduces the friction in acquiring the practical knowledge with labs and your home lab. That's what it's good for. So you're not tripping over things like, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does this mean? And you can just immediately get to work with it. Yeah, exactly. It all builds. It's all part of it. Yeah, Bearded helps you too. Yeah, Easy helps you build it. Exactly. Cool. Okay. What else do we want to cover over here? Okay. Let's go back to this drawing that I had a little bit over. Where was it? You know what? Maybe I think I'll start with the life cycle. Or actually, I might just take like a 5-minute break right now. And then we're going to jump into the life cycle. Because I want to talk about life cycle and then data versus intelligence. And then I want to... Where are we at over here? And then I want to talk about... Let's actually look at a report and then do some threat actor analysis and some TTP analysis and then talk about the kill chains. Okay. Yeah, that's right, Bearded. Yeah, don't sleep on it. Yeah, so all that helped us experience. So if we were talking, and then we'll take a break quickly on that note, right? I'm not sure if you were here for that when we talked about it, right? But the core analyst competencies for like a cyber threat intelligence analyst, which is a function that you'll perform in various roles in cybersecurity, there's that pillar of technical literacy. You're developing that now. Don't think that it's all for naught. But the Reaper, thanks for the follow as well. Okay, let's go and let's take a break. Little fiver. We'll be back. Okay, we're back. Let's jump back into it. Zeno, no offense by that comment. Obviously, just having some fun with discussion. Coffee just kicked in. Yeah, great, folks. I guess we're gonna find out in time what's going on up in the skies, right? See what's actually going on up there. In the meantime, we've got CTI to figure out over here. Karina, no offense taken by you. Yeah, should be able to have some fun with it. Humor and fun is important. Okay. So, now that we've talked about, we've discussed the cyber threat intelligence types, we've talked about the difficulty of attribution, fighting bias versus our research. Let's talk about the life cycle. So what does this actually look like if it was a life cycle? And then we'll look at some models and some reports together as well too. So CTI as a life cycle. Okay, so yeah, let's go requirements collection. So it's gonna go and start over. Yeah, requirements. So requirements, as we've talked about, are the needs. Why are we even trying to collect or compile intelligence in the first place? Remember when I said that image of nighttime traffic? That's technically, if my requirement said, get me nighttime traffic at this intersection, this is technically a good result. It met the requirements, but it's not exactly what we're looking for, and we know that we talked about that. So how do we get from this nighttime traffic to this as our production? What's the jump? What's the leap? Well, a life cycle allows us to work through this together in such a way that there is a level of feedback to make sure that we are accurate and we are precise. That's kind of what this is all about. So then we have collection. And then we have processing. And we have analysis. And then, I mean, you sort of have another step in here at times, but I would say there's sort of like a hidden step. But truly it goes to dissemination. And then feedback. And then it repeats. I like to throw out there that there's sort of like a hidden step of compiling over here. And I say that because it's not everyone's strength to be able to do all parts of this cycle well. It's just not. And depending on your role, so Bearded collected a hash. He did some analysis and some comparison. Bearded Ruckus did that. The SOC ticket was the requirements there. So his ticket gave him requirements of what he needed to do, and he has a playbook to go through this and respond. And what he did is he performed some collection, getting the hash. He did some processing, reviewing what it is to make sure that it actually is the correct hash that they're looking for, and then some analysis comparing it on the vendor website. Then he disseminated it in the ticket. Now, at that point, it's somewhere else. He might get feedback directly from the manager, or it's going to go upstream somewhere else. That could go to a detection engineer to work with this hash to make sure that if it was actually, malicious, if this actually was masquerading, then it would go to another team. So Easy saying, compiling, do you mean deciding how to communicate the info? Compiling, I mean more so like the report generation. So this is sort of like report structure. Can sort of be like an additional step in there at times, because it's not always going to be a report. But this is the CTI lifecycle. This is the circle of life as it would pertain to cyber threat intelligence. This is how we get to a deliverable. Now remember that I said that the hardest part is the requirements. So I'm going to try to make this real easy to remember. So the requirements is essentially just trying to understand what you don't know. And hopefully that's a little bit easier now. That I hope is going to make that section a lot easier for you in the future. Deliverable meaning good quality report. Yeah. But this is it. This is the production of intelligence. It goes through this life cycle. Whether you're a dedicated analyst or whether this is just a function within your role. Remember, all the way back to the beginning, we are trying to get intelligence to mitigate anything that could compromise confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And our final deliverable has to be intelligence that is actionable, relative, and timely. And we do that by going through this process. We go through defining the requirements, so understand what we do not know. Like, what don't we know about this thing, about this incident, about this threat, about this scenario? Once we have the requirements determined, we can now go into a procedural, very methodical, step-by-step process of collecting information, collecting data, processing it. And that could be very much like looking at normal logs that are very hard to read, but then getting that over to a SIEM where we could read that a lot easier, like ELK. So this collection and processing stage is just gathering lots of data in different shapes, forms, sizes, and then putting it into a view that we could read it, that we can understand it. And that's where the analysis stage kicks in. We are now analyzing what is the output of our collection and processing. That's it. So Bearded saying, so it was contained, isolated from the network, and then I contacted the client. The client gave me some good intelligence and wanted the hash to be whitelisted so it doesn't pick up on the same lure for the future. It costs $5, yeah. That'll cost you a little bit of money. So that's how we get cyber threat intelligence to a level that is actionable, that is relative, and is timely. We rely and we lean on this chain over here. This chain of events, from requirements to collection to processing to analysis. Remember when I said that cyber threat intelligence is derivative? It's derivative of the need of having intelligence being required for someone or something. So it's derived from something else. And the only way that something derivative can become accurate and precise is through an iterative process, which means you're doing it over and over and over again and getting better with it and refining it. And that's what happens in this life cycle. You are taking largely a bulk amount of research data that you've collected, and then you are iterating through it, reducing it, shaping it, and getting into a state where you can work with until you can make a decision and then disseminate that, and you communicate that to a stakeholder. The stakeholder then makes a decision, and they're either going to say, that was good and helpful, or I need more information. Now, sometimes they might just tell you that that was bad, and you need to redo that. That's going to happen as well, and that's fine. It's okay to be told that you did something wrong. That's fine. Gene, thanks for the follow. Also, Batman, too. The Batman followed us. Are they still in here in chat? No, I guess they were just passing by. But this is the Batman followed us as well. So does that all make sense? Because this is it. If you can hold yourself to this structure and you are ultimately, like, your reports are going to look like these CTI types. That's it. So if I were to give you a hash right now and say that this hash was detected on our network, what would you do? How would you determine, or rather, sorry, what are the requirements? What don't you know about that hash right now? Tell me. Go ahead, define it. Doug saying make some eggs and cook it all together because I'm a cyber chef. Yeah. Well, now I just want to have hash browns and eggs. I think I'm going to eat that after this. That's what I want. Yeah, CI. We don't know if it's malicious. Okay. How do we determine that hash is malicious? What do we do? Let's think back to the life cycle in front of us. Brunch rocks, yeah. What do we do? What do we do? Let's go through this. Check it against known bad hashes. Okay, good. Okay, good. OSINT, virus total. Yeah, we start performing some collection. Upload to any.run or virus total. Perfect. Good stuff. Yeah, good. Okay. Okay, so now you have some results. What are some things that you are looking for based on the results of that hash? Now we're here. Now we're back at CTI types. What are we looking for? We're doing a tabletop right now. This is live. This is live tabletop with chat. Define for me what some CTI types would look like based on the hash. How did it get on the system? Yes. Okay. Tactical. We're looking at tactical information now. How did it get on the system? What are the TTPs that got it there? Okay, good. So we've established our tactical needs that we need to figure out. What about our technical? Okay, yeah, sophistication. So wild piece. How do we determine that? How do we know that the hash could have been sophisticated or not? That's a weird question to say like that. I should say, how do we know that the way that the hash got there was sophisticated? Let's break it down. Come on. Phishing, USB, okay, yeah. How on the network, what technique did they use to get it there? Okay, yeah, good. How it's used, good, okay. So we've determined sort of like where it came on the attack life. We're going to get that in a moment. The attack life cycle. Cool. Okay. Triage it, what processes it was associated with, and when it got there. Yeah, okay, good. So that's technical information. So now, technically speaking, what processes were related to it? What is it associated with? So we're looking at like DLLs, file names, binaries, file paths, all that stuff that Easy's talking about. Tactically, we're thinking about like how did it actually get there? Was it by phishing, USB, what technique? Operational capability, that sophistication level that we're thinking about is like what is the complexity? That's what I'm trying to get to. So how complex of an attack was it for it to get there? And was it immediately noticed or not noticed? And how much more of the attack is also there that we didn't know? So Easy's saying, yeah, are any groups associated with this? So now we're getting to strategic. Will-wise, what family does it belong to? What are some of the capabilities of the binary? Yes, exactly. So now we start thinking about the complexity and the requirements of what permission level is required for the binary to even execute, that this hash was now discovered. So if this was like any user could run it and it compromised the system, like, damn, that's a really good attack. But if this was a binary that required a system level service to be executed for it to work properly, also complex, but the capabilities of this actually being successful is therefore much lower. So operationally speaking, we can make a better decision on how to triage this and how to work with it. And then strategic, like Easy is saying, is yes, are there any groups, like who's associated with this? Is Willwise the threat actor? Is Doug the threat actor? Or was it Karina? Or maybe it was Easy Does It. She knows a lot of information so far. I don't know. But that's going to help us figure out what to do, right? We have now gathered the 4 core types of threat intelligence that we need to prepare our report. So what we've done is we've gone through the analysis lifecycle, the CTI lifecycle. We've defined requirements. We've collected it. We've processed it. We've analyzed it together. We've talked about it. We now have 4 types of intelligence that we could fit somewhere in a report or documentation. And now we can hand that to someone. And then that someone is going to give us feedback. So you know what we just did there? We just went through a SOC tier 1 level ticket together. That's what we did. And you see how you could all work with it? You should have clipped that up. Easy. I mean, it's going to be on the recording too. You can grab it after. But that is a live tabletop SOC tier 1 type of ticket that you would work through. So cyber threat intelligence, you can see why I love this. Like this is, like I love teaching like the GRC, the CTI, and adversary tactics side of things, because I think once you get to this level, when you start thinking about structuring your research in such a way that it does the work for you, well, now you know what to spend your time on, what to spend your resources on. You know how to be accurate, how to be precise, and how to get away from bias. And then you can deliver information and intelligence to someone to create a detection rule, create a better security program policy, maybe eliminate a task that shouldn't be happening in the first place, maybe put up a firewall or a proxy or a filter to prevent this type of thing from getting the network in the first place. And this is all because of cyber threat intelligence. So the triage methodology that we've taught so far in terms of knowing what to do, well, did you see it? Like this is all like wax on, wax off happening here, Karate Kid. Everything that we've been doing with the SOC Analyst triage skill set happened in the life cycle. The ability to look for persistence process and networking related anomalous activities, all of that happening that we've taught, that we've walked through now, is part of this life cycle when you discover something like an unknown file hash. So like I said, you should be ready for tier 1 analyst tickets after you get through all of this. Because we just did it. If this was an email, same thing. You'd go up and down the headers. If this was a pattern inside of a log index, same thing. You'd be looking through for the persistence, process, and networking related IOCs and attack and such. And you go through this life cycle as it happens. CI, would I go into this specialty? Yeah, I would. I think it's pretty cool. I think as a dedicated threat intelligence analyst, it would be really cool. But I will say that dedicated threat intelligence analysts are not so much going to be like, you're not triaging. Not often. You are much more on the research side and then providing technical and tactical intelligence for technical teams, and then providing operational and strategic intelligence for business managers or security managers. So it's a little bit different. And senior threat intelligence analysts might actually even be involved in reverse engineering and digital forensics, performing deep technical level analysis of things and then providing that intelligence to someone else. So it depends. I think still though, I mean, you all know my take. I would still probably prefer GRC over threat intelligence for me if I were to go into it. CI, so they don't do the report writing. Some do, some don't. Some do both. It it depends. It depends on the scale. If you are a threat intelligence firm, there might just be a team that is working on the report. Oh, Will, I gotta add you to VIP 1 second so you can share links. Okay, you should be able to share it now. Go ahead, share it again. You're now a VIP, Will Wise 101. Karina saying, do I remember correctly, are detection engineering and threat hunting considered part of CTI? I mean, yeah. So I think, as you can see, right, like CTI is part of every role. So a detection engineer would be responsible for providing technical intelligence and tactical, or working with it. So Bearded determined that the hash earlier on with the client should have been whitelisted, right? Okay. So Bearded then is going to either himself going to go and whitelist that hash with detection engineering tools, or he is going to hand it over to a detection engineering team to then whitelist the file hash. A threat hunter, well, Bearded did threat hunting. He researched whether that hash was a malicious or not. He threat hunted for it. And then he provided that information together, working with the client. Remember, a lot of overlap in responsibilities. Let's see what old Will is sharing over there. GitHub, Center for Threat Informed Defense. Yeah, we're about to get to MITRE. Okay, yeah. Nice. Adversary emulation. Nice, yeah. Yeah, so here's like a nice intelligence summary on APT 29 and their associated groups, their objectives, their targets, their operations, and all of the, if we look at the MITRE ATT&CK Navigator, so this is a tool used by MITRE ATT&CK that we could see all of the related, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more for you on stream. You can see that their initial access is related to spear phishing, and then execution, they're looking for PowerShell, and client execution and scheduled tasks. So if you know that this group is targeting you and this is their attack, then they're likely going to be targeting scheduled tasks. That's how you would use this information. Nice. Thanks for the share, Will. I hear Will likes in threat intelligence as well. All right. Where are we at now? What was the last thing? I think we wanted to cover... What did we want to cover? Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah, we'll talk about the models in a little bit. Okay. So let's actually go and take a look at the Verizon data breach report. We looked at this last week, right? Or was it? Or the week before? Bearded saying the tier 2 agent wanted me to figure it out. Wanted to figure out how to whitelist it and the tool for practice. Nice. Yeah, so you got a little bit of practice there. And you think it was because Friday everybody wanted to start his weekend, who knows? But yeah, see? You just start to get more experience doing it that way. So, Karina, how do we go from having a hash from malware to knowing the adversary group who created the malware? Open source intelligence. So, if I had a hash, right? Like there's actually the challenge in this module is that but if I had a hash, I would go and I would look online to see if anyone has been able to attribute it to that threat actor. Now, if I don't have that, this is where we get into it. So we're going to look at that shortly over here with MITRE ATT&CK itself. Okay. So Verizon DBIR. So how does a report, we looked at this, I think it was last week or the weekend before, right? But how does a report like this even get structured? These are industry breach reports. So these are types of reports and information that you'll be looking for. But it's not like someone just had a giant Excel sheet and recorded all this, or maybe they did, but hopefully they didn't. They probably had some software or some type of service or a database collecting this information and then outputting it somewhere for easier data to be worked with. But where did this even come from? So if we look at the VARS framework, or rather VARS, there are frameworks out there that allow you to work with data at a very structured level. So let's take a look at I want to see their chart. I thought it used to be on like the main page. Here we go. Okay. So there are very complex frameworks out there that threat intelligence analysts that are dedicated to it, like a company that would prepare like the Verizon DBIR, they would use a framework like this one, the VARS framework, where they will categorize attacks into structured data. So it's not just when you're performing analysis and such to this level, it's not just like you are saying spear phishing attack happened, successful. Okay, like let's add that to the spear phishing bucket. That's not how it works. You're going to be using some type of structuring or normalization on that data to look for trends. So you will use a framework like this, and in this case, you could look at different variables. So if you had a spear phishing attack that happened, you would look for actor.external. So was there an external threat actor? Because you could have internal and external. So maybe it'd be yes to both. Was there a partner threat actor? You would say yes or no to that too. Or maybe it's unknown. Now, what are the actions that took place? So was there evidence of hacking or malware or social engineering or misuse of privileges? So what are the actions in regarding to this spear phishing attack? What actually happened with it? And then in terms of attributes, well, here it is. Like I told you, right? Attribute.confidentiality. Is it possible that confidential information was exposed? Or was the integrity of any system affected? Or was there an availability loss? So when we're talking about attribution, this is how we balance that confidence versus bias. On that scale, or sorry, the CTI types and bias on the scale of confidence and uncertainty to determine what is the degree of attribution to the threat. Well, we can look at the level of confidentiality impacted or integrity or the availability, and we make our own decision on this. And then we can look at the assets that were impacted. So is there a server or network or user or terminal or media or people or unknown? Now, eventually you will get something like this piece of data, which is going to be in a database somewhere. We can see that in year 2014 on June, so June 2014, incident ID is 2014 Mayberry. Security incident is confirmed. Discovery method is external, found documents, found out from a reporter at the newspaper. And the summary is the external actor used phishing results and malware on a server. External actors is true. Malware, true. Social, true. So it was related to social media. Social notes, it was Frank in accounting again. So it was related to Frank. And confidentiality was impacted and integrity, but not availability. The assets that were related is the user, the server, and people. This is actually what it would look like if you were trying to categorize and collect and catalog data. Now, this isn't information yet. This is still just data. The Verizon data breach report, this DBIR, would take a database of data like this and then turn it into a report like this, based on thousands of events that took place that have now been structured into a format like the VARS framework. We can now then just get all that data and export it into a report. That's it. That's how you make it easier for yourself. And this is why I said that sometimes analysts aren't actually writing full-blown reports. They're just organizing data. And then you can use a report generating software that takes your data and generates a report for you. What do you think? What do you think about all that? Taking it in. Karina's saying, so it uses your answers to those variables and generates a report like that. Yes, correct. This is how we get like full-blown threat intelligence reports in the industry. You can lean on frameworks, and this is where you get cyber threat intelligence frameworks so that you're not reinventing the wheel. You can categorize all your data to something like the VARS framework and then prepare very, very interesting reports as a result. And then ultimately, you can look at your summaries. Right? Credentials by web application, a little over 40%. Phishing emails, a little over 20%. And as we looked at, I think last week, right, the results that in phishing simulations, 20% of the users reported it and did not click, but 11% of users clicked on the phishing email. Trained, professional, corporate enterprise level users will click on a phishing email, and that number is going up. In 2016, it was less than 5%. It was maybe 3%, it looks like, 2.5% to 3%. We're now at 11% of users are going to click on phishing emails. And that's the ones that we know about. And we know this by categorizing data to something like the VARS framework or any other of the frameworks out there that will help you organize your data so you can look at it holistically and at a high level view to understand what you need to focus on. So industry breach reports are open source intelligence tools that you can use to help you better understand where you should be spending your time and resources as a company. Because if you had your management team and they're asking you, like, how can we improve on our security posture? Like, how do we mitigate more email-based attacks? And if you said, well, we should actually start performing phishing simulation exercises, and we should put in more email security filters and proxies. And your stakeholders who have to spend money said, well, why? Well, here you go. Here's my cyber threat intelligence that supports why I'm even saying this to you in the first place. It would appear that 11% of users will click on a phishing email, and that number is increasing year over year. Now I need money. That's where you're going to use a report like this. Pretty cool. Bearded always goes back to the cash. Yes, it always does. Always, always. A business is made to make money. And if you need to tell them, whoops. What? Where did it even go? I don't even know where that went. I hit my mouse and it just disappeared. What the? All right, let's try that again. So if you need to tell your organization that you need so much money to secure it that the business can no longer make money, or that it's impacting their ability to grow financially year over year, you're just going to get told no. So you need threat intelligence to help you provide intelligence to stakeholders to make risk-informed decisions. Okay. So that's a little bit of a look at data breach reports. Bearded saying you appreciate the insight that's in the course that, yeah, more tools does not mean more efficient. It just means that you know more tools. That's it. Okay. So let's move on and let's actually take a look at a threat actor report. I'm trying to remember which one we're actually looking at over here. APT 41, yeah. Threat intelligence. Yeah, APT 41. Okay. APT 41, Mandiant. So now let's take a look at a threat actor report. A little bit different than a breach report. Notice that in common, we both have executive summaries. Strategic info is for the org. Strategic info is for anyone that needs to understand the motives and intent and overall preferences of the threat. It could be for anyone, as long as they are interested in knowing that information. So you're going to notice between breach reports and threat actor reports, they are both going to share an executive summary. Executive summaries is exactly what the name implies. It is an executive level summary. So what is executive function? Biz, yeah, but what does it mean? What does it mean if someone has a strong executive function? And what does it actually mean itself? What is executive functioning? Goes to the decision makers, yeah. High level thinking, emotional control, yes, yeah. Specialty in making directive decisions. When I think of the brain, yeah, yes. It's exactly what it is. It is largely the ability to do. It's decision making. Now, executive summary. And this is why you have executive roles. This is why you have the C-suite, CISO, CEO, COOs, etc. These positions are for people that either have experience or natural inclination or innate ability to make decisions and make them well. So an executive summary is a summary for you to provide to someone to read who is in that position. Now, an executive summary could be technical, depending on the needs for it, but largely it is just going to be a high-level summary of the entire report or the information you provided for someone to read, and that should be all they need to read to get an idea of the decision that they need to make. Hence being a summary. Abscess, thanks for the follow as well. So you're going to see this. This is a common thing in reports, and tomorrow we're going to talk more about these and the report writing module. So CI, you're going to say overall summary. Well, not an overall summary, because an overall summary doesn't mean you have to make a decision from it. That just means it's a summary. But an executive summary means that this is a summary that you can read and make a decision from it. That's different. So you're going to notice that, like, in something like this. Now, we have a threat report. So this is a executive summary specifically on the threat of APT41. So what do you see here? APT41 espionage operations against the healthcare, high-tech, and telecommunications sectors include establishing and maintaining strategic access, and through mid-2015, the theft of intellectual property. Right here, we immediately see strategic intelligence. We also see a little bit of tactical. It's not very specific, but it's alluding that there is some level of tactical intelligence provided here as well too, because they are looking for intellectual property. So you can see FireEye Threat Intelligence assesses with high confidence that APT41 carries out an array of financially motivated intrusions, particularly against the video game industry, including stealing source code and attempting to deploy ransomware as well. And they're also trying to steal digital certificates. APT41 has executed multiple software supply chain compromises, gaining access to software companies to inject malicious code into legitimate files before distributing updates. So what do we see here? We see things like strategic and operational intelligence is a strong focal point of executive summaries. I don't see technical here, though. I don't see IPs. I don't see domains. And I see a light alluding to tactical, but I don't see specifically what they're doing here, play by play. Now we have an overview. So CI, this is actually more of what you're looking for. You'll see in some reports, this is an overall summary, and this actually will include a little bit more specific information. So this is another thing we could see. Now we can see some sections broken up. So this is a more detailed view of like their targeting, what they're actually targeting. We can see the countries that they're operating as they're looking at for targets more specifically. We also get a sense of their operations over time. So what are they capable of over time? What is their success rate? Now we're getting into sophistication. Like, how good is APT41? We can also see a change in their TTPs. So their tactical level started specifically with video games in 2012. They became more sophisticated and targeted more industries in 2013. And it looks like in 2018, for whatever reason, they heavily targeted the travel industry, but then they stopped. So now we're getting into tactical and operational intelligence even more. Here's a breakdown now of their cyber espionage activity. Actually talking about like a little bit more of a play-by-play what they actually did. And we start to get some screenshots of what they're actually deploying. So now we're getting a little bit more into like even technical. Here's a breakdown of how they targeted the healthcare sector again as well. What motivated them. The hours that they targeted it in. So now again, even more specificity happening in the tactical intelligence. And Rabbit OU, thanks for the follow. Pretty cool. So this is what a threat report looks like. It's a little bit different. But you can see all of the threat intelligence types are at play. They just come up in different sections. And the further we go into the report, we start to get actual, well now, we can see over here the serial number for the certificate that was being signed. So now we have technical pieces of intelligence for us to work with that could be given to the detection engineers and senior or tier 2 analysts and up. We could create Yara rules. Remember we learned Yara last week? Well, we could do Yara detection for things that would have this serial number or this type of text. We also get a breakdown of like what their attack would actually look like. So you can see this starts to get very, very technical. We actually even have assembly code. So this starts to get, this is what I mean, this is what I was saying earlier, that when you start getting into a full intelligence production report that comes from a firm like Mandiant, there's a very wide degree of skills that are required. So it's not just one person that's writing this. This is a team. So, Karina, your question? How do we know if a hash we found was malicious? Well, did it come up in open source intelligence? Is it on a report like this or somewhere documented? If not, then you put it through a sandbox and you have to do your own intelligence research. You need to go in and investigate, what is that binary doing? Put it through a sandbox, and what are we looking for there? Persistence, process, and networking. Then you have to make your own decision and your own determination of what it actually does. So does that make more sense now, Karina? And anyone else that might be wondering, like, if I find something, how do I know it's bad? Well, you're either going to find it on intelligence sources or you're going to have to do the intelligence yourself. Probably both anyways, though. Yeah, very cool. Okay, so now we see attribution, like I talked about before. So what do we see the first word over here? We assess with high confidence. There you go. Attribution is going to be that balancing act of confidence versus uncertainty. So based on everything that this report has been able to cover so far, we now get to attribution to determine that, yes, it is attributed to Chinese individuals who are working on behalf of the Chinese state. Here are domains related to it. And this is what they did, and this is what they targeted, and these are the names responsible. So attribution, like I said, is that degree of confidence. And that comes in your ability to compile enough research that you can feel confident in reporting it. Companies are going to come up with different types of tiers, like low, medium, and high. It will vary, but there are tiers for this as well too, and these preferences are determined by the organization. Cool. Just want to see. I'm pretty sure there's. Yeah, it goes pretty deep. There's a ton of information, code. Yeah, here we go. Now we actually get reports on the malware used specifically by APT41, their description, and how it was detected. This is a threat report. Very different, but this should give you an idea of what is required to prepare threat intelligence. And if you go back to the threat intelligence competencies, the stronger you are in these 4 areas will help you be able to eventually get to a position to do this if this is what you want to do, or at least provide pieces of it to someone else. And then next we're going to talk about the attack lifecycle itself. We're just going to take a little 5-minute break before we do that. Pretty cool, huh? I hope you can look at this now and appreciate, like, based on what we've covered today, it should be apparent that there is a structure to this, and you should be able to read a report like this now and be able to start picking out what might fit into one of the 4 CTI types. That's going to be the goal. let's take another little 5-minute break. And then we'll come back and we're going to look at the attack lifecycle and MITRE and some models and frameworks. And that should be it. Okay, we're back. See? let's go more into this. It's not that complex, is it? I hope. Is anyone now starting to see cyber threat intelligence a little bit differently, I think, perhaps, than what you might have imagined it to be? Good stuff, yeah. Karina, yeah, you really like how analytical it is? Yeah. For sure. Will, he learns something new every time you see explain it. Yeah, nice. Yeah, Beard, it's giving you a more systematic approach. Yeah, it's more organized in your head. Exactly. Good, good, good. Yeah. It actually is very, very logical. Very. It is a very logical thing. Okay, so let's give you the final piece of the puzzle to build that structure even a little bit more. Because at this point in time, you now know 4 types of intelligence that we're looking for. You know the life cycle to put the intelligence research through. And you can generally, at this point, get a sense of what industry and threat actor reports are like for you to find information, which is an example of looking up open source intelligence. So how do we know that we got enough information? That's the part that really trips students up, and this is why we're going to cover it now. Because you know what to look for, and you know the quality of what to look for, but then a lot of students start to get this doubt. When do we stop? I can research all day. I can keep finding more and more information about this. What's the cutoff? Yes. When do we have enough information? Well, what do you think I'm going to say to that? What do you think I'm going to say to that? Never? It depends. Requirements. Will is onto something over here. No, I'm not going to say it depends, and I'm not going to say never. Easy is close to it too. Yeah, when you can answer the art, when you can provide, when you have those properties available for you. But to Will, yes, requirements. When your requirements are met, when you can look at your requirements and you can define enough of them on your own, then you know you have enough. Now, if you're looking for a bit of a guardrail to figure out if you've over-provided, yeah, so LPC stops when you satisfy the requirements. Correct. Remember what I said to you early on? I said I need a picture of nighttime traffic at an intersection to know if it's busy. The requirements were met in both of those scenarios. So this answer and this answer are both the answer. One of them is better, but we only know that it's better because we can intuitively look at it. Yeah, Easy Does. It says, a client asked this week, how does it map to MITRE? Yes, okay. That's where this is going. So, we're now going to be looking at MITRE ATT&CK. We're now going to be looking at some frameworks and some models that can help us understand when we actually have enough information. Now, before we can look at this, what I do want to look at is BK, thanks for the follow. Oh, Miss Rabbit as well too. Rabbit, thanks for the follow too. I swore I said that, but yeah. Okay. There are models out there that can help us understand. Let's go to cyber attack lifecycle. Okay, there's a couple out here that can really help us put in place, and we're gonna look at the Lockheed Martin kill chain. Okay. It's a terrible image. Let me try to get another one for you. Okay. So, before we can even get to MITRE and all that stuff, let's talk a little bit a moment for timelines. An attack or an incident or an event has a couple inherent properties. It has a start, it has a sequence, and it has an end. That's it. Okay? That's it. That's actually it. Everything has a start, has a stop, and an in-between series of events, which is a sequence. A series of things that happened in between start and stop. Now, there are some industry frameworks out there to help you understand this in a chronological matter. This is why incident response has timelines. Every incident response, and this is why like playbooks or runbooks or your incident response procedure has a chronological method to figure out what's going on. And you do this by building and establishing a timeline, which we're going to talk about more, I think, next week with the DFIR side of things. Because up until now, also, you've only really learned how to perform the triage as it would pertain to just performing the triage steps, but not as it would pertain to an incident. Not incident response. You've learned how to look for things and how to collect intelligence, but you haven't learned how to define it within a scope of where to contain it all. And this is going to help you determine when to stop. If you can answer these questions based on what you found. So this is why when we look back at the CTI lifecycle and I was throwing out questions to the chat. If we found a hash on the network, okay? What that would mean is that is later on what we call the attack lifecycle. The attack lifecycle is everything that happened from the start to end and in between of an actual incident or an event. And what you found, your first idea in your head, like to get perspective, should be, where is this on the attack lifecycle? So where am I? Where am I chronologically at this point in time? And this is like performing a police investigation. You have to recreate the series of events that happened so that you know where you're starting from and you know which direction you have to go to find out what happened. So think of the attack lifecycle like a thread. And if you found an incident, I'll draw this as I go as well. If you found the hash, like how Bearded did, where is it? Where is it on the attack lifecycle? It can only go left or right at that point. Okay? It's only going to go one of two directions. And your job with intelligence is to determine the level of impact to confidentiality and integrity and availability, the impact of CIA as it would pertain to where this incident or event is on the attack lifecycle. And you're going to go as far left and as far right as you need to go to determine where it started, where it stopped, or where it might go, and what it could have impacted in between. That's it. You stop when you can answer those questions. How did it get in? What did it do? Where is it going? Not what if. Not what if, okay? The what ifs is based on your... That's later for you to consider. That's when you're looking at your final results, like your data collection and your analysis. And then you can prepare some what if scenarios for your report to document some conditions. And only if it was related to the requirements. Otherwise, you're not preparing an intelligence report. You're not actually providing intelligence. You are providing... You are editorializing. You are writing a blog, or you're writing a novel, or you're writing an excerpt, or you're writing an opinion piece. And that's not threat intelligence. So when do you stop? You stop when you understand what happened. And you understand what happened by relying on the attack lifecycle. And in this case, we're looking at this and we're saying, here is the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain. This is an industry model based on a lot of years of experience that an attack is typically going to follow this chain of events. And it is a kill chain because whatever you stop it at will stop the series of events. So, delivery. If we look at delivery over here, it says delivering weaponized bundle to the victim via email, web, USB. And then we have exploitation. Exploiting a vulnerability to execute code on a victim's machine. We could probably say that the hash that was discovered with Bearded's ticket was largely related around to the delivery stage. That's where it was discovered. Now, what Bearded should do next to be able to determine is, well, what happened? What did it exploit? And what do we do at that stage? Persistence, process, networking. Yes, exactly. What was ran? We look at logs, we look at events, we look at process activity, we look at threads, we look at thread operations, we look at DLLs that were injected or not, we look at artifacts left on disk or memory, and we make our own decision at that point. And we work down this kill chain to figure out what is the last thing we can determine that happened. If there was no network activity, then we know we can stop at 4 and maybe 5. Done. We now know the end. What we don't know is the beginning. So we now go back in our tracks, look for evidence of that hash in network activity that came in, or logs and events, and we determine how it actually got inside the network. Once we do that, we stop. We have now figured out everything we need to know about this incident. We now compile a report, and we present this to someone. That's the end of your intelligence. That's the end of your research. You stop there. And you do this by holding yourself accountable to something like an attack kill chain model that suits your needs. The Lockheed Martin kill chain is really good. The Mandiant attack lifecycle is quite similar. But this is, you need to work by a timeline. Does that make sense? Because that's honestly it. It doesn't actually get more complicated than that. That is the extent of your research. So when you are doing your DFIR exercises and stuff, and you're studying in CDA, and you're in the field, and you're working on VSOC or real SOC tickets, the extent of your research is based on how far left or right you're going along this chain. Imagine flipping this like horizontally. Bearded saying this is gold. A lot of resources out there give you a definition of these frameworks, but no practical examples. I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. But that's exactly, that's why we're covering this, to make sure you know how to use it. Now, again, the Mandiant attack lifecycle is also quite similar. There is reconnaissance, compromise, foothold, escalate privileges, internal recon, move laterally, maintain presence, and repeat until you complete the mission. Similar. Okay? Very, very similar. Now, where does MITRE ATT&CK come into this? Well, MITRE ATT&CK and all these other frameworks out there, you need to understand that these are actually data buckets. That's how I learned about it, and I think that it makes the most sense. Because what are we seeing when we look at MITRE ATT&CK? Is there anything relative here? Is there anything timely? Is there anything actionable? Maybe a little bit of actionable, but is there anything relative? And is there anything timely? MITRE ATT&CK is a repository. It is a repository of data, and it is what you can use as reference material to figure out more about a specific attack pattern, or rather, tactical intelligence. Yeah, this is what Doug covered before. When you are doing your research and you're further in the attack and further in the CTI lifecycle of analysis and that compiling and dissemination, you are now working on that tactical intelligence level to determine. So we found that hash, right? Well, if we had to go further left, and the MITRE ATT&CK sort of works chronologically, like not entirely, because some of these steps could go back and forth. But if we knew that based on the kill chain that the hash was discovered at delivery, but there was no exploitation, then you would probably want to look at MITRE ATT&CK for initial access and maybe execution. But we know that there's nothing on persistence. We know that there's nothing on privilege escalation and such. So what we do in MITRE ATT&CK is what we would, based on what we were able to discover, are there known published attack patterns, these TTPs? Are they out there for us to reference to get a better understanding so we can provide better intelligence? So the initial access, right? Was this a phishing attack? Yeah, easy. I mean, they move mostly left to right. Mostly. But there is some room. It's not fully chronological, and that's why you have to make a bit of an assessment yourself. Because defense evasion could be something that happens later or before. Yeah. So if we had initial access, that might have been phishing. You could click on phishing, and now the amazing thing about MITRE ATT&CK is that you actually, and it's what Doug covered as well, right, is you now have the ability to get full documentation on what the attack is and what are the sub-techniques related to it. Is it a spear phishing attachment, or a link, or service, or voice? And it gives you a breakdown of what it is. It also gives you some procedural examples. So here's an example of how Axiom used spear phishing in their attack. Or rather, just, spear phishing to initially compromise the victim. So we can take a look at 9 and 10. So here's two articles. This is where MITRE ATT&CK got their research from Axiom using spear phishing to initially compromise their victims. So now I can research this and say, okay, here is a full report on how spear phishing was used to compromise victims, and here is another report as well too that talks about it. Let's see. Okay, so observed methods include the traditional use of spear phishing, leveraging of generic and strategic website compromises and target attacks against public-facing infrastructure. One of many distributing attributes of Axiom is your ability to create and leverage large pools of compromised machines, sift through them to identify the organizations of interest, and quickly, within hours or days, begin secondary follow-up of exploitation operations. You see how I quickly was able to think about that? And I'm following the cues presented to me. So if we had that hash that Beard had found, and it was provided to us by initial access by spear phishing, and we looked up the spear phishing technique on MITRE ATT&CK, and let's just say that this was eventually attributed to the Axiom group. Well, I just read a report on Axiom. It says they act within hours or days. So if I wanted to provide timely intelligence, I would inform someone we have hours to days to react to this incident based on past attacks by the Axiom group. What do they look for? They're also looking for compromised machines via administrative accounts, local exploits, or remote exploits by like the ZOX RPC, so a remote procedural call malware. They're looking for escalation of privileges to dump credentials. You see, we know exactly what we need to look for. This is where MITRE ATT&CK comes in. MITRE ATT&CK is going to help you to get a very deep understanding of the tactical intelligence, the TTPs. And sometimes you might have references to reports that contain technical intelligence that are such like IPs, domains, etc. Additionally, you will also be provided with mitigation. So let's just say that we couldn't attribute the attack to any of these threat actors. Okay? If we can't attribute it to a threat actor, well, at least we can work with mitigation. So we can say to ourselves, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 mitigation strategies that we can implement if this phishing email got in and delivered the binary to our network, and here's the hash of it. Okay, well, here's how we can prevent that from happening again. There's user training, software configuration. Look, we can use SPF and DKIM and DMARC, which we've talked about last week. Restrict web-based content. So Bearded said it was a .exe, right? Okay. Maybe we should be preventing .exes from being downloaded or executed or any shape or form through web traffic unless permission granted. But in this case it was, right? It resulted in him having to whitelist it. But if we wanted to prevent it, we would want to prevent certain attachment types. And in this case, we know it's a .exe, so we're going to prevent the .exe from being interacted with. What about detection? So Karina is saying, so mitigation is prevention. Yes. What about detection? Well, here is your levels of detection that we can work with as well too. So following this, if Bearded was able to determine that the file hash came on the network by phishing, and he couldn't attribute it to a threat actor group, then he can at least provide strategies or recommendations from MITRE ATT&CK of mitigations and detection. Now, as he gets more experience, he'll be able to provide even more relative intelligence to the team internally, because he'll know what their network is capable of. He'll know their detection tools, he'll know their firewalls, he'll know their policies, the business behavior, etc. So MITRE is generalized, and he can work with it, and then he can take it further. And as long as Bearded is staying on the kill chain, looking left and right from the start and stop, trying to figure out where the events had happened, then he knows he can stop. He knows when he has enough information. And again, what is the information he's looking for is things that could compromise confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So look for those things going left and right on the attack lifecycle. Correlate that to a repository like MITRE ATT&CK that can help you provide a better explanation of attack patterns and damn, you've got a really good threat. You have solid threat intelligence at that point. It is actionable, it is relative, and it is timely. It's also very accurate and very precise. Not bad, huh? Yeah, Doug's saying you don't want to. Yeah, you don't apply it to everyone. It's a starting point. It's a reference point for you to get an understanding of the attack. You still have to do your own analysis internally in the network and look at your own events and logs. MITRE ATT&CK is a starting point. And for good reason, right? Let's go back to as a whole. This is a lot to remember, right? It's nice to have a glossary, a repository for us to look up. Yeah. Beard is saying it helps to do this over and over. Yeah, exactly. So Beard, that's why I said this is an iterative process. You get better at this, and your research methods make you more effective and efficient. Yeah, because you have business service level agreements, those SLAs. You have certain, like, you might have to close or wrap up or respond to a ticket within 24 or 48 hours and such, right? Maybe even faster than that. So I hope that all makes a lot of sense. I think we covered. Doug saying the 5% that this wouldn't work is if you have a group of attackers making simultaneous attacks in different areas and they have already grabbed an internal admin's password and you see attacks from 3 or 4 or 5 different fronts. Exactly, yeah. So use that methodology to try and find the point of initial access. Yeah. Yep. It's reference knowledge. So like, you know, easy, you know, like your question you might get is how does this map to MITRE ATT&CK? Well, you first think about where it is on the attack lifecycle, and then you use MITRE ATT&CK for some level of like left and right alignment to figure out where you're at, and then try to find a TTP that closely relates to it if you're not sure. Over time, you'll get enough experience that you can like think of these things fast and then know where to look. But if you're not sure at first, this is how you build it. Cool. That's cyber threat intelligence, everyone. Karina's saying, I think you were saying CTI can be part of multiple roles. Yeah, it's part of every role. Are some cybersecurity roles more heavy in CTI than others? Yeah. Digital forensics is very heavy in CTI. Very, very heavy. And senior analyst tiers as well. And then dedicated cyber threat intelligence analysts. Yeah, I would also say too that again, going back up to the notes, right? Maybe think about it like this. If these are the CTI types, the more your role is involved in gathering more of these, the more CTI heavy your role gets. And I shouldn't even say gathering, but like working with. Because sometimes it can be both or one or the other. And don't even think that this is just like related to, like, go look at Mandiant, right? Let's take a look at Mandiant over here in the background. So Google Careers, 34 jobs matched for Mandiant. Yeah, a little bit of lag there, Karina. So let's take a look. So we can see like senior cyber threat analyst, Mandiant intelligence at Google Cloud, project coordinator. Like, you don't have to work directly as that role. You could be adjacent to it as well. Like just remediation advisor. Like this job is just on remediations. And again, Mandiant being like a threat intelligence firm, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, you're not going to see dedicated CTI roles at organizations in general. You'll see them a lot with like the DoD, public sector, Department of Defense, etc. And then consulting firms that are dedicated to it. But I hope that helps too. So the last thing that I want to talk about is the pyramid of pain. Okay. So now you know what you're looking for, the life cycle of getting it, when to stop, and models and frameworks that help you categorize, normalize, and structure your intelligence. Now, how do you know the quality of your intelligence? And I should say rather, how useful is it? And I talked a little bit about this early on when we looked at the 4 types of threat intelligence. But the pyramid of pain is a model. It's been out since 2013. It's a fantastic model. This model allows us to get a visual overview, right to the point, of what is most useful. If you gave me a report that was full of hash values, it would be trivial. If you gave me a report full of IP addresses, it'd be helpful, but also kind of easy for, and when I say these difficulty tiers, these are the tiers of difficulty that a threat actor would have to encounter or face to change. As we know, hash values can be very easily changed. IP addresses, yeah, we can go grab another one. Domain names, a little bit harder, but we can just grab another one. Now, let's look at, again, at Bearded's example. What about network and host artifacts? If the file hash that Bearded had to work with changed, the execution of the malware would probably be the same or very similar. Therefore, the process activity, the DLLs, the threat operations, the disk interaction or the network activity, the file paths would probably be the same, if not very similar. So you can see that becomes annoying for the threat actor to have to change. but the hash is easy. Now, what about tools? If the threat actor became very reliant on Cobalt Strike or other known tools for creating a command and control structure, a C2, that'd be really annoying for them to have to change. Finally, TTPs is probably the hardest. If you can figure out TTPs, and this is why like Easy is being asked, like what is the MITRE TTP for it? Because you could still change the tooling and the artifacts left behind and the domain name and the IP address and the hash, but to get the threat actor to change what they do, Numkey, thanks for the follow, but to get the threat actor to change what their strategy is, what is their tactical play, that's hard. That's really hard. So the Pyramid of Pain is a model of intelligence collection that you should aim for. If you can aim to collect this intelligence going up the pyramid, the better quality your report will be. Because it makes it harder for the threat actor to change their strategy around. If you can if you can apply defenses related to this pyramid. That's it. So again, because the whole narrative today has been this hash, in terms of Bearded knowing when to stop and start, like where to look and go with their research, well, he should go left to figure out the initial access and compromise, and he should go as far as he needs to based on the execution that happened with that binary. And then what he should be looking for during that to really improve the quality and enrich his report should be this. He should be going up the pyramid. So Krina is saying, so if you missed it, what would be some examples of changing network host artifacts be? Well, every single time that a binary is ran, remember when we did the process persistence and networking triage? Any of those. Remember when we looked at the Cobalt Strike beacon and we saw that there was a Windows API call for allocating memory? That's what I'm talking about. Like, those are the artifacts we're looking for. What is the reflective activity of the malware or the binary doing what it's doing? Because you can change the name, you can change the hash, you can get a different domain, different IP. That's all pretty trivial. But they probably spent a lot of time putting together an attack or coded the binary, the malware, to do what it does in a very specific way, that it's going to look the same way every single time it does it. It's going to call the same DLLs. It's going to interact with the same processes. Yeah. So artifacts are anything that is left over. Like, what are the what are the tracks? What are the tracks left behind by the threat actor or the malware? Those are artifacts that we're looking for. They're likely not to change. Cool. I think that's it. Now you've got a challenge in this module. I mean, it's optional, but you really should do it. But one of our detection rules in Good Corp Network has recently been hitting on the file hash of this file hash. We're looking to have the security team weigh in on what's going on with this rule. What should we do with it? Bearded, you helped catch a true positive malicious phishing email the other day for one of the clients' IR team with the info we've learned in the email analysis course. That's amazing. I love hearing that. Seriously, software courses have been extremely helpful in the way I do your work. That's awesome. I told you, the SOC 100 series courses, it prepares you for this tier 1 analyst work. You just have to stick with it. Shoot, just dropped my... Whoops. 1 second. I'll grab that after. It's well gone across the room now. Drop the iPad pencil. CI, the challenges can be used as projects. Yeah. For sure. But that's it. Honestly, that's it for cyber threat intelligence. Now it's just a matter of getting better with it. So go do the challenge. And go and continue working on your triage skill set, because your triage will yield intelligence. And tomorrow we're going to learn how to write reports. So you can go and write reports on your GitHub and your portfolio and communicate all this stuff. That's it. That's all you need. That's all you need for cyber threat intelligence now. Now go out and do. I hope you've all enjoyed this class of cyber threat intelligence. So we're going to stop there for the day. Recording should be up on Tuesday. Karina, you think you understand operational versus tactical better now? Yeah. Good. Tom, you got a lot from this class today? Yeah. This is why we actually keep CTI towards the end. Because imagine if we started the course with this, right? I'm not sure if you were really like catching on, but I made so many references to like the earlier content that I couldn't have done if you just opened up with this stuff. And Bearded, yeah, your ticket worked out pretty well. It worked as a pretty good narrative. Just keep rolling with. So thank you for being a SOC analyst, Bearded. Doing your thing. Yeah, it ties back into so much of what we covered, yeah. So now you should be able to do like look, I should be able to throw anything at you. Here's a phishing email. Like I should just be able to give you a phishing email now, and you should like go at it. Like go through the CTI lifecycle of what are your requirements, and you know what to look for from the email analysis module. And then go and see along the attack lifecycle how to go left and right from it, what you should look for. Work up the pyramid of pain for the quality of it, and then ultimately just compile strategic, operational, tactical, and technical intelligence. That's it. Like we've come full circle. Full circle. This is the extent of the tier 1 analyst skill set that we've covered since October. Tomorrow we're going to learn report writing. to just improve it. And then yeah, next week and then the next couple weeks, we're gonna throw you in a virtual SOC, and we're gonna put you to work, whether you like it or not. I can't just keep teaching you and lecturing you every single weekend. I'm just gonna put you to work now after this. Like, here's your virtual SOC, off you go. Karina, this is super interesting. Yeah, good to hear. Bearded, yeah, started her SOC role. Yeah, of course. Ariel's gonna, she's gonna kill it. I'm confident of that. I have a high confidence level. Ariel's gonna crush it. DT, yeah. So Doug, we were using Bearded Ruckus as a target. Yeah, you know it. SOC 100-5 is now just gonna be an entire course about targeting Bearded Ruckus. Good stuff. Okay, cool. Well, that's it. That is all I've got. Thank you for spending another... Said you can handle anything. Yeah, you can. Thank you for spending another Saturday over here. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for the support, the following, subs, the chat engagement, the questions, and sticking with it. That's 27 classes down. Thanks again, everyone. Have yourself a good rest of your Saturday. We'll see you tomorrow for SOC 100-2 report writing, and we'll see you in Discord otherwise. Have yourself a good rest of your Saturday. Thanks again, everyone. Have a good one.